Hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to our Empathy Power Up. It is Tuesday, July 13th, and we are so excited to be here. I am here with both the Empathy Guy and Captain Empathy, which when I was writing this update yesterday, I was like, oh my gosh, the two empathy people, and I'm so excited to be here. So without further ado, I'm going to give you the space to Kevin, and then Kevin's going to introduce our special guest today, Edwin.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so exciting. I was just honored to be part of this Power Up where we get to have Edwin join us, someone I got to know recently and learn from, and it's so exciting. And so just a quick intro for Edwin. Edwin's just this amazing, done this incredible amount of work. Is a founding director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy. The center's website, cultureofempathy.com, is the internet's most comprehensive portal for empathy-related material. It hosts many empathy building projects, including interviews with over 300 experts on the topic, trainings, and the Empathy Tent. We're going to go into the Empathy Tent. The tent goes to public events and offers listening, facilitated dialogue, and conflict mediation. It's really powerful. I heard about this story. We're going to talk about it. And one of the current focus that Edwin's working on is developing an online empathy circle facilitation training course and massive open online course, or MOOC. From his experience, the empathy circle process is the most effective gateway and the first step practice for learning, practicing, and deepening empathic listening skills and mindsets. Edwin, what an honor for us to have you here and to chat with you.
And the pleasure to be here with you. Thanks for the invite. Yeah, really great to be here too.
The work you're doing and the story I heard, I would love to hear from you. How did the Empathy Tent start, and what is the Empathy Tent?
Well, I've been working about 14 years on the topic of empathy. You know, I came across the value of empathy and said, this is really important. You know, this is really what the world needs and can contribute to greater well-being, and I've dedicated the rest of my life, however long that is, to fostering empathy. And so we do a lot of different projects, and during Occupy Wall Street, those signs up said the 99 against the 1%. I said, we need 100% empathy. So I created this tent canopy, it's 10 by 10 foot canopy, set it up at the Occupy Wall Street encampment in Berkeley, and we offered listening, conflict mediation, other empathy building practices there. So since then, we've been setting up the tent in different locations, different over the years. So it was about 2011 till the present, been setting up the tent and offering that listening.
And so do you remember a powerful moment from that experience? Because that was a big movement that sort of resonated all over the world. And I think what you did was the important part is not us versus them, not talk past each other. Let's listen to each other. Can you share an important story that sort of you still remember from that?
Well, one that really stands out is the second day that I was there was a knife fight started, and it was a guy had the biggest Bowie knife I've ever seen in my life. It's like about that big, and he was, there was a lot of conflict between the different groups there, and you're dealing with addiction, homelessness, just a wide variety of issues within that encampment, and there was a lot of conflict. And he was in a fight with someone else who had a big pipe, and they were going at each other. And I thought for sure they're going to kill each other. So I had a little box, what we called of empathy cookies. So I was going around giving cookies to everyone, saying, have an empathy cookie and come to the tent. And I went up to the guy, and he wasn't facing me. I said, excuse me. And he turned around. He had a huge knife. And I said, would you like an empathy cookie? And then it's like, and then he just glared at me, and I thought, oh, I'm out of my league here. It's like I've taken on too big of a chore. So So anyway, that was really memorable in terms of, how do you deal with pretty intensive conflict? For a second, he slowed down, and maybe that kept him from killing the other person, because he did slash the other guy's arm, and eventually the police came and took him away. But that's the kind of stuff we were dealing with, was offering listening and conflict mediation between people. And that was sort of where I got the idea for the empathy circle. We didn't quite implement it at that point, but I thought, how do we turn around the big dysfunctional camp with a couple hundred people? And I sort of thought, well, this empathy circle practice would be a way if everybody could practice this and listen to each other and learn this empathic listening skill, that could have helped turn around. But the police closed down the camp, before we could really implement it, and probably been working at it ever since.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting is this tent that started with this amazing story of the empathy cookies, which I feel like it would be great giveaways for like empathy conferences. Here's an empathy cookie, and then it led to this empathy circle, which I know Amy has trained in, and I got to experience it once. I have not yet been trained, but I got to participate. It was just very powerful, very impactful. So can you tell me a little bit about that journey towards that empathy circle and what you're creating now with this massive online certification course?
Well, when I first started with the empathy, work, I didn't know much about empathy, and just started studying it, looking at different practices, and came across the work of Carl Rogers, who's a clinical psychologist in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I think his work is quite seminal to, empathy work in general. He's considered one of the 2 or 3 top clinical psychologists, of all time. And he developed the empathic listening process of just listening to his clients in a therapeutic context, and just reflecting back his understanding of what the person is saying, staying present with them, just being there as a companion, basically, with deep presence and listening. And he just found just the healing aspect of that. And so, having learned about that and a lot of other different practices, there's a whole list of different practices that I kind of looked at. I sort of distilled down the using that process, but in a relationship. So with small groups where we listen to each other, 4 or 5 people, where we use this empathic listening, active listening process with each other. And it's just a very simple first step gateway practice. If you just really master this, you'll find that it'll help you in any other sort of practices. And so I've been working at developing that practice and taking out of the therapeutic and putting it into the relational. It's just human beings together with each other, listening deeply to each other. And it's very healing. And we're developing the training and building a whole, and Amy's taken the training. She can probably say something about her experience.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, facilitation, like the facilitation training, what you do is like you help bring people together to facilitate their own circles. And I think that's super powerful because it just has this ripple effect. And I also, because, I wrote the book Empathy for Change, I got to meet other empathy experts from all over the world. And I got to meet you, Edwin. And like, this whole world opened up to me literally because there was people who were in like from India, from the UK, from all over the place in the US and abroad that are working in this space, but they might not do the same thing that I'm doing, but they're doing something similar. So I think that just like allowed me to have a new kind of like tool in my toolbox, especially as I go and I try to build more empathy in the world. So it was really impactful for me. So that's why I'm thrilled to be here.
And I know you're interested in design, human-centered design, and the empathy circle I see as sort of a gateway practice. Like if you get rid of the empathy circle and that practice, you're going to learn these skills that you can then use in sort of design work and in listening to people that you're designing for, as well as if you want to be a counselor or a therapist. This is a really good practice for learning, learning the listening, even for psychologists, psychiatrists, or just any of those sort of professions, as well as conflict mediation. that if you can bring people who are in conflict into an empathy circle, it's the foundational practice for, conflict mediation, and then you can add extra little steps to it to be a full-fledged mediation practice.
I think what's really important, especially for our folks that are in companies and organizations, this is important in your day-to-day. I think it's beyond just healing communities. That is absolutely amazing. And that's what I'm hearing is, and I've used this. I use this in my work, in my day-to-day work, in meetings, and working in office setting, where when someone says something, I reflect back. So what I've heard is this. I want to make sure you, and then they say, yes, we're aligned. And it reduces, in fact, it saves time for the company, because now you don't have this idea where you think you're aligned, but you're not really, and you've talked past each other, but you think, and that happens so often. And so this is such a powerful utility, an application of empathy in such a great way. And I got to experience it and I love it. And I wanted to see if we could give a little bit of flavor to our audience today of what that empathy circle could feel like. Edwin, what do you think about that?
Sure. Yeah, what we could do is either of you could talk about a concern you have in your life, and then just share that concern and anxiety or fear that you're dealing with in your life. I don't really put you on the spot here. And just, share a little bit of that, for about 30 seconds, share an idea or two, and then pause, and I'll do an empathic reflection with you. So just to model it.
Yeah, so there's usually a question or a prompt, right? And so this was the sort of the question. So I'll share something that I'm sort of a little bit struggling with right now and have anxiety on is, over the last year, over the pandemic, I sort of had that first initial spike of drinking alcohol and stuff. And then over time, I've sort of had self-reflection moments, and then really alcohol consumption had gone down to the point where I started not enjoying it like I used to, like enjoy having a drink. And then now that the spaces are opening up and friends are coming out and social life is happening, it's still anchored around alcohol. It feels like a lot of new friendships and stuff. And I'm dealing with this anxiety of, how do I continue participating in that social world where people feel comfortable without having to drink alcohol? Without having to come in and says, oh, I'm going to have 3 drinks, or let's go out for a drink. Because that's the only thing realistically that still people are most comfortable doing, is let's go out for a drink. And so that is something that I'm sort of struggling with right now, is how do we disassociate the culture of alcohol in social sort of lubrication and social meetings with people to find common, just opportunities to meet each other and find new connections with friends.
Okay, so let me reflect back. So what I'm understanding is you've cut back on your alcohol consumption, and you have some concerns that you're wanting to be more social, but being social revolves around alcohol consumption, and you don't want to sort of engage in that, but you want that to be social. And you just feel some anxiety about how can you be social in those contexts without alcohol. You're just sort of sitting with that question too. It's just a question you're sitting with.
Yeah, I feel heard. Thank you so much. And that is powerful. And that is just like this little reflection. Amy, what did you think of that little reflection?
Yeah, I appreciate it. So that's kind of like a taste of what happens as a circle. So there's a facilitator, right? So who comes in, and Edwin in this instance was the facilitator. Usually do it with like a small group of people. You can do actually with a whole bigger group of people, hence the empathy tent. And you just get to listen to each other and repeat back. And the thing I think that's so powerful is that when you feel like that person has heard you, you say, thank you, I felt heard. And that is so powerful, because so often we don't feel heard in our day-to-day activities. And so this is a wonderful opportunity to do that. And I can see so many great applications for it, not just in our workplace, but, obviously in design, like we were talking about.
Yeah. So in this process, one person is the speaker. So, Kevin, you were the speaker. You shared, and I reflected back my understanding, because the goal is for you to feel heard and understood to your satisfaction. I'm not kind of giving you advice. I'm not saying, no, you should do this, something else. I'm not ignoring you. I'm staying totally present with you. And then I listen, I reflect back my understanding. You check, hey, did I understand what I was, am I being understood? If you felt understood, then now you would continue on, and we would go maybe 5 or 6 minutes. And then once you feel heard to your satisfaction, then you would select someone else in the group to speak to. And I would actually be as the listener, I would then select who to speak to. I would speak to Amy, and then I would share my concern, and Amy would reflect back. And we go for up to 2 hours in this practice. And this is like a basic exercise in staying present, listening deeply, and you're sort of rewiring your brain. Instead of having sympathy, giving advice or any of these other sort of distractions from empathy, you're kind of strengthening those neural circuitries for, I guess, to listen more deeply, and it'll affect it starts affecting your whole life, actually.
Yeah,
it truly does. Thank you so much.
And who doesn't need somebody to, like, some time for you to, like, have self-reflection, be in space with somebody else. And also, like, I think what is powerful about having a circle with other people is that you build upon other people, and you start seeing you're not alone, and that there's people who are here to help you. And I think these are all things that we have all felt, right? Feeling alone, feeling like we aren't heard, all these different things. And it's just like this simple act of creating an empathy circle can have such a profound impact on people's lives.
Yeah. And now I just looked at the watch and I'm like, wow, that was a fast power up. We got powered up very quickly. And
Yep.
it was incredible. Edwin, thank you again for joining us. Wow. I am so honored that you're doing your work and I get to be part and nerd out about empathy with y'all. It's great.
So, Edwin, I'm curious, how do people find out about you and about the work that you do and your MOOC coming up?
You can check empathycircle.com. That's the link. There's several websites. You can go to empathytent.com, empathycircle.com, or cultureofempathy.com. We have different websites for these different aspects of the empathy work, and any of those will get to us and to the trainings. And the trainings, we do empathy circles for free, and the trainings are free. You can donate if you wish, but we're really trying to spread this practice. The ultimate goal is if we can teach every person in the world how to do this practice, I think it would be transformational in the world. And it's very doable too. Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's such a amazing opportunity to do that. So I highly recommend doing it. I've gone through it. It helps you facilitate that. And one of the things that, like, really stuck with me is, like, I'm so much more present because of that experience is when I'm with somebody. And that is something I exactly wanted to work on, was to be present and to be there with somebody and have a conversation. So it's helped my relationships in a big way. So thank you again, Edwin. Any last words, Kevin, before we close up? Okay. Well, thank you so much. Check out Edwin, and we will see you next week. We have another special guest joining us for our next session is going to be Grin Lord. And find out more about on our website and so on and so forth. So we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.